Well, this could be a tense and possibly violent day across Russia. A prominent opposition figure has called for mass demonstrations in about 100 cities. It's to protest alleged corruption among Russian officials, including the Prime Minister. Fred Pleigten joins us now from Russia, who is amongst it all. Fred, these protests are essentially illegal, unsanctioned. What's the security situation like?
Yeah, hi, Linda. I think that the security situation most of the time is perfectly fine. However, there are some tense moments that we've seen as the protesters who are now walking around me, sort of towards the Kremlin area. There were people as they were gathering who were arrested. I personally saw about 5, 6, maybe 7 arrests take place of people who we believe might have been some of the protest leaders as they were gathering there. It's interesting because the reason why the authorities here in Russia have said that these protests are illegal is that they say they're happening in so many different places, as you said, about 100 cities all across Russia, that they simply can't guarantee for the safety of the people attending the rally. However, what we've seen is a massive police presence. We've seen riot police, regular police, police with dogs, undercover police officers, some of them actually walking here among the protesters. We saw some of them who had these red armbands before, which sort of identify them as plainclothes police officers. They've now taken those off and are actually walking here with the crowd. So at times it's tense, but as we move along the protest route right now, the protest is going on, and I would say it's a decent amount of people. I would say it's certainly over 1,000 people that are here in Moscow alone, Linda.
Right, and of course these sort of protests are happening right across the country, about 100 all up. They're largely about anti-corruption against the Prime Minister. Yeah. What are people saying about him?
Well, you know, that's the main issue that was put forward, was that the opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, said that he had information. He put out a dossier saying that the Prime Minister of this country, Dmitry Medvedev, had essentially put together an empire of holdings, and that this is something that they deemed was sort of government corruption in the real estate sector. And so that's why they're saying they're protesting against this. It's called "Not Our Demon" is the theme of the protest, which means "Not Our Dmitry," as referring to Dmitry Medvedev, the Prime Minister. But of course, this protest is about a lot more than that. Alexei Navalny, the opposition leader, wants to run in the next presidential election here in Russia against Vladimir Putin. There's very few people who believe that he has a chance. Vladimir Putin, of course, has approval ratings here in this country of about 80%. And the Russian authorities say that at this point in time, Navalny couldn't run anyway because there's still a corruption case against him going on that he deems to be phony, but he is still in an appeals process there. So he's certainly someone who not having a very easy time, making it difficult for him to sort of get a footing in the political process here in Russia. But at the same time, someone who clearly the Russian leadership deems as someone who I wouldn't say is necessarily a threat, but certainly someone who's very uncomfortable to them. And that's certainly also one of the reasons we believe that this protest has been deemed illegal before it even took place. And there's so many of them, of course, happening around the country, Linda.
And Fred, this, of course, comes just days after another Kremlin critic was killed, this time in Ukraine. What is the latest on that investigation? And are critics there, opposition figures, worried about their own safety?
Well, I would say a lot of them are worried about their own safety. You talk, for instance, about Alexei Navalny, who's in effect the organizer of this protest here. He said, look, I was thinking about getting a bodyguard. I was thinking about getting protection. But at the same time, he says he believes that if someone wants to hurt you in this country, it's going to happen anyway, whether you have protection or you don't. So certainly it is an issue among opposition figures here. And if you look at that latest case, the Denis Vornenkov case that you were referring to, that happened there in Kiev, you have the two sides trading barbs at this point in time. You have the Ukrainians blaming Russia for it, saying that the person who killed Vornenkov was an agent of Russia. And then you have the Russians saying it was absolutely not us. Any sort of allegations against Russia are absurd, they say. So it is really a back and forth right now. And as far as the investigation is concerned, it is just now getting underway. The murder happened 3 days ago. Mr. Vornenkov has already been buried. But the Russians are saying, look, conduct the investigation. Don't blame us yet before having conducted that investigation. The Russians are also saying that they want to be part of the investigation to ensure that it is, as they believe, fair, Linda.
Fred, it's just incredible seeing these pictures of all these people surrounding you and also just pouring out onto the streets of Moscow. Given the fact that you said Vladimir Putin is still very, very popular there.
Yeah, no, he certainly is. And we have to keep in mind that despite the fact that you have these masses coming out today, Vladimir Putin does have an approval rating of about 80% here in this country. And, you know, judging by experts that you ask, those approval ratings are very real. I mean, that is the sentiment here in this country. Very difficult for the opposition to gain any sort of traction. Now, they say that part of it, so we have a little scuffle going on here right now, Lynda. I just want to break away from this. A little bit of pushing and shoving going on. But, yeah, very difficult for the opposition to gain any sort of traction in this country. Just want to see what's going on here. You have the protesters chanting, and you see the riot police seem to be arresting someone at this point in time. We're going to ensure that our cameraman is safe as this goes on. So you see they appear to be trying to arrest someone right now. They're coming this way. Make sure our cameraman is safe. And here you can sort of see also, Lynda, a little bit of makeup of the security forces that are around here. So you have a lot of these riot police, but you also have some plainclothes police officers who obviously are in on this as well. This is sort of the thing that they do. They sort of mix in and among the crowd, and then when they want to arrest someone, they sort of just take these people into custody. It seems to be this man here that they're trying to take away right now. And usually what then happens is that these people get put into a police van, taken into custody, and then obviously get dealt with by the authorities trying to get out of the way here to make sure we don't get caught up in this incident and take place. This is, by the way, Lynda, not the first time today that we've seen something like this. Again, I've personally witnessed about 5, 6, this would be about the 7th arrest of this kind since this protest has started. So it really seems as though the police, as you can see, cracking down quite hard. Certainly wanting to make sure that really that they do a lot of crowd control at a time, Lynda, when the police was saying that they don't have enough forces to ensure people's safety.
Right, yeah. I mean, these protests, of course, are essentially illegal. The protesters couldn't get approval to rally on the streets today. Are you seeing much aggression from police?
Well, I mean, you can see right there, it seems pretty aggressive at the moment. The crowd is now chanting to let these protesters go. As you can see, the protesters, they're struggling with that arrest that they're making. You know, there was a little bit of aggression at times. I mean, you could tell that the police definitely had what I would describe as sort of a zero tolerance policy as all of this got underway. We saw, as the protesters were gathering in the very beginning, almost immediately, many of them getting arrested by the police. Here's one of those, if Byron can just hold the camera up, you can see the police are coming in, and those are the vans that they usually take people into custody, and these police vans that we've been seeing the entire time. But yeah, certainly can be described as a zero tolerance policy here by the security forces, who really took a lot of people into custody very, very early on in this protest, and as you can see, are really doing exactly the same thing right now. So we don't want to really get in their way at this point.
And Fred, what are people there saying about the problems with corruption there? This protest, of course, largely about corruption and the Prime Minister. Do they want him to step down?
Look, the sort of motto of this protest is not our Dima, right? Not our Dimitris, which is referring to the first name of the Prime Minister, of Dmitry Medvedev. So it is certainly a case where these people say, look, they don't want to see the kind of government corruption that they deem has been happening over the past couple of years, over the last various years here in Russia. Whether they want him to step down, that's not really something that they're saying, and it's certainly, judging by the popularity of many of these Russian government figures, it would be very, very difficult for them to force something like that. We're going to walk along with the protests a little bit more. As you see, the protest is getting underway again, as what I'm guessing is happening right now, that they're probably getting the guys that they've arrested, or the people that they've arrested, getting them into one of these police vans. But the protest, as you can see, is still moving in that direction, and we'll see how long the authorities are going to let it go on, because, as you said, the authorities have deemed this protest to be illegal, Lynda.
And just finally, Fred, what sort of scale is this? When you look at protests that happen in Russia, how does this compare to recent protests in years gone by?
Well, I would say it's a decent size. Look, right now, actually, having walked in this crowd, I would say that it's probably several thousand people that have turned out here in this place in Moscow alone. It doesn't seem like a big crowd, but at the same time, protests generally here aren't that big. It's certainly not anything on the scale of some of the protests that you've seen in the past, especially after the last election of President Vladimir Putin, but certainly still quite a decent size. And always we have to keep in mind these protests are going on around the country, that they're in various different towns and cities, and we've been getting some updates from those places as well. And people there said, look, the crowd sizes there are also fairly decent, despite the fact that you have this zero tolerance policy that we've been seeing here from the authorities.
All right, Fred Pleigten on the streets of Moscow for us, staying across it all. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.